Gentlemen, today we welcome my great friend David Osborn, real estate titan and co-founder of GoBundance, a tribe of wealthy, healthy, generous men who choose to lead epic lives. In this episode, David takes us through the journey of his life, the impact that his father and family had on his success, which reveals a powerful truth that he's come to understand, that true wealth is not just defined by your financial success, but by the love and legacy you create within your family. David has lived a life of true adventure. He's always on the go, and while many know about his vast business accomplishments, or maybe read his New York Times bestseller, Wealth Can't Wait, today we explore a new and powerful story rooted in his recent adventure to an orphanage in Nepal with his son, and how we all might bring more adventure, purpose, and meaning into our lives. I love this man, and I think you will too. So I want to talk about travel. I'd love for that to be a theme. You and I started chatting about telling the story of traveling with Luke to Nepal, and I want to get to that. But to sort of create a foundation, I wanted to talk about your travel as a kid.
Okay.
Because I know a little bit about the story. I mean, I know a little bit about your life growing up, and I know about your adult years traveling around Europe. I want to get into those because I think that'll just give some context to who you are and seed this conversation a bit. So, dude, maybe the first question is, tell me about either the travel that you did have or the travel you didn't have as a kid and how it impacted your life. Maybe there's a story in there you could share.
Yeah, so much. It's so interesting because my dad was Army. He was a Green Beret colonel at the end, and he worked at the embassy in London at the end of his career. But in the beginning of his career, he was moving all the time. We moved all the time.
Yeah.
So I was born in America. At 18 months from Bethesda, Maryland, I moved to Heidelberg. And then from Heidelberg, we moved to Frankfurt. From Frankfurt to Mönchengladbach. From Mönchengladbach to Rheindahlen. These are all military bases where my dad had different leadership roles. My parents decided to send me to school in England because mom's English. We had a whole family over there. So at age 8, I went to a boarding school in England where I was at that school for 3/4 of the year. Barely seeing my parents through that time.
So wild.
With uniform, with corporal punishment if we misbehaved. The headmaster had a slipper called Dirty Harry, and it was a size 17 trainer.
Jesus.
And if you misbehaved, you got whacked on the butt with Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
And I probably got hit half a dozen times. I was definitely cheeky. And then from there, so I'm living in England, driving back and forth to Germany. And then his last post was as the embassy in London. So we had a house in London provided by the government, like multi-million-dollar house because he was the military attaché, but we didn't own it. And we had a chauffeur and all the bits and pieces. And so really by the time I'm 14, we'd probably moved 8 times.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Dad retired from the Army. I was at another boarding school in Oxford. And he said, "You want to come back with me or do you want to stay in England?" And I said, "I want to come with you guys." So we went back to Austin, Texas. That's where he retired to. And so I'm 14 years old and I've probably moved 10 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did that do for you now looking back as an adult? What skills did you take from that? How did that strengthen you?
Yeah, it's just you know that you're going to move from school to school. So you don't really you learn how to make friends quickly. You never really you don't go as deep, but you're willing to go broad very quickly. So I learned how to make a lot of friends. I learned how to be very self-resilient. The English school was very tough. I mean, you had to watch out for other kids. It was age 8 through 13, 130 kids on kind of a giant mansion/school up on a hill in Surrey, England. And we stayed there for the weekends. We didn't go home on the weekends.
Wow.
We got 2 weekends a term, and they had 3 terms. We would make camps. We would cook beans over fires. We made fires. It's like insane if you think about it. No one would let their kids do that today. There was a place called Colditz, which was one of the camps, and if the kids caught you, they would put you in their prison. So if they caught you like Saturday morning, you'd be in that prison until dinner. They had to let you go at dinner because there was a dinner with a roll call.
Yeah.
And so people were throwing stones at each other. It was just like this whole thing, and it like Lord of the Flies. So I just realized, also this was a school for diplomats' kids to learn resilience. So I kind of realized in hindsight that if you just take a bunch of kids and you pack them in a school with some teachers that are crazy too, there's always that crazy teacher, right, that would go after the kids. So you're like on guard all the time. You just develop this incredible awareness and resilience. And then moving so often was the same thing. You're at a new school. Who's the bully? Who's not the bully? Who's going to be your friend? Who's not going to be your friend? Like you're just constantly negotiating from a heightened state of an awareness. So I think the gift of all of that was awareness.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so interesting knowing your world now, especially leading a men's group. You know, you can see, I feel like you can see somebody's childhood and they go, oh, it makes sense why, you know.
So much so. I'm learning that more and more as I get older.
Yeah.
You and I.
I see little David going, one day I'm going to rule all these men. You know, I will be the leader of this.
Well, here's the other thing. My older brother was with me.
Yeah.
He was 4 years older, but he was an athlete.
Yeah.
So he always found his place on the sports field.
Yeah.
I was like 90 pounds and tiny as a kid. So I was okay at sports, but I was never great.
Right.
So I didn't have that. No one was like, hey, Dave, you know, you're in our group now. We're the athletes of the school. They always have a home. I had to find my home. And I found my home in different niches and different groups. And then when my folks retired to America, I went to 5 high schools and I got kicked out of 3 of them. Yeah. So I just continued that pattern. I think there was a part of me that was like, wow, no one's giving me any respect.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how one day.
That's right.
I'm going to slow burn.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how to get respect.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And also, John, I notice I'm good at community. And the reason is like, I moved so much. I was like, oh, how do I quickly bring people together around me so that I have community?
Yeah.
And my whole life, if I look at it, when I even went to Germany in my 20s, like I was at the Goethe Institute learning German. I quickly pulled like 5 or 6 kids together and said, we're going to be the Salvatores. And we're going to have a motto. We say, we like to drink. and we made all these mottos and we'd go drink together. But I pulled them together and then that was my crew.
That's
that make
cool.
Sense?
Yeah.
So I think I did that a lot. But there was another interesting side story you said about travel. My parents, I don't know why they did this, but I'm 14, my brother's 18. And they got us something called a British Rail Pass. And they took us to the train station in England with a tent and a little bit of money. And they said, we're going to pick you guys up in 6 weeks. And they just said, so the British Rail Pass, you could go anywhere on any train in the Great British Isles, so Scotland, Wales, and England, probably Ireland too, but we didn't go over there. And it's all free. It's just paid for. And so my brother and I went on this adventure, and we had a cassette tape, and we had Human League Dare, and we had The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I remember because we used to listen to it over and over again. Yeah. And then we would hitchhike, and we would get rides on trains.
Dude, it sounds so crazy.
It is crazy. Who
he was
does
18,
that?
You're 14?
He's 18.
Good
14.
Lord.
Who lets their kids do that?
Maybe knowing you now, maybe a genius, you know?
Maybe.
Because there are, this comes up all the time, especially in the Front Row Dads community of, there's all these things that happened to you as a kid. You know, I can see some men, the listeners who've been listening to this show for a while, they know where I'm going with this. And that is, these things happened to you as a kid, and they were so formative in your development. And here you are, this incredible human. People would want to go, all right, well, let's just go back and redo the formula. What is that formula? Oh, shit, send your kid out on a backpacking trip at 14? I don't think I'm going to do that. So then you take away the things, you protect your kids from sometimes the things that allow them to be who they are.
For sure. I see that in myself.
I'm
an independent-minded person, but I do notice if my kid has some obstacle, I have a huge desire to clear that obstacle and instead of let them sit.
For sure. Yeah. I think it was Tim who said at a Front Row Dads retreat, we are all helping our kids survive our childhood needs, which is
I like that.
So good.
I like
and
that.
So true.
Yeah. And that's for sure true with my dad, who was so strict, and I'm so not strict.
Yeah.
You know, I try to have boundaries and be firm, but generally I will lean towards permissiveness over strictness.
Yeah.
And I think I just have an aversion to the way the level of hand control that he had on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I also don't know that you can predict how it turns out, because my brother was right there with me, and he's nothing like me.
Yeah.
So you can't always predict. You could put some.
That's the other part of it.
Yeah.
That's the other part of it. You just, how many kids come up in the same family and turn out so differently? That's a case for less is in our control than we think.
I think for sure.
Because my sister and I, we love each other. We have a great relationship now, but we're very different people. And
my sister.
I think that's so much of who did you meet along the way? What were your friends? What's your DNA makeup? You know, the spirit that's born in you. There's just so many variables.
I read Richard Branson's autobiography, and his mom, who is also from Guilford, which is where my mom's from, she would drop him off like a mile, I think, from the home, and then just drive home, and say,
find your way
home across the field.
It's so good. All right, so you did this big adventure with your brother. How about with your parents? Did they take you places outside of just moving cities?
Yeah, we were not wealthy, but my grandmother lived in Budleigh, Salters, and we were always doing something. We got to ride on military aircraft for free. So I remember my parents took me to Greece, and they took me on that airplane where the seats are backwards and they have parachute netting, and you get these. They're really loud. They're the C-5 transport plane.
Jumper seats, or they're called jumper seats?
Yeah. Exactly. And they flew for free to Greece.
Yeah.
And then we went and explored Greece, and I remember that, and I remember little trips like that. We were always doing something. It wasn't usually very high end, but we were. And then keep in mind, we were living in Germany, and I'm going to school in England.
Yeah,
so they would drive to pick us up, and then they would drive us back. I remember staying awake and rubbing my mom's shoulders while she would drive all night while the other kids were asleep. And we'd get on a hovercraft with the car, and it would drive.
Stop! Really?
Yeah.
That's so crazy, man. That's cool.
So we were always doing something. We were always outside. We're always in the woods.
Yeah.
We grew up. My uncle had a farm in England. He was wealthy, my great uncle, and he had the gameskeeper's cottage. He'd let us use that for free. So I grew up with shotguns. I was hunting at age 11 and 12. I just don't ever remember being inside. Always going outside.
What part of that experience, or the travel, the movement that you had with your family, do you want to replicate? Do you find yourself going, oh, I got that as a kid, I want to give that to my kids?
100%. Like my children, my son's 8, he's probably been in 21 countries.
Yeah.
My daughter is 16, and she's probably been in 30 countries.
Yeah.
Like taking them somewhere all the time when they were young is so important to me, just so they see the world.
Yeah.
Americans have a disadvantage. We have no appreciation for how freaking amazing it is in this country. And until you've been to and kids don't always pick up on it. I took my daughter at age 8 to a township in South Africa.
Yeah.
So we're in this township, and a township is basically like a slum. So in South Africa, there's, maybe 10 million middle class in a country of, say, 45 million people. But it's the wealthiest country in Africa, so people are coming from Zimbabwe or from Zambia, and there's these townships, which is where they land and they show up. So we took my daughter there, and we took her to the village elder, and he's living in a house a little bit bigger than this podcast studio, like 20 by 20. And his whole family had grown up with him in that same one room.
Yeah.
They do have running water, which is like a hose running outside, but it's running water. And then they don't have a toilet. They share a porta potty with another couple families. So there's outside in the toilet area, there's 16 porta potties. That's their life. So I took my daughter to that, and we walked through it, and we talked to the guy and learned all about his life. And then when we left and got in the car, I'm like, Bella, what'd you think of that? And she said, Dad, they're so lucky. They live with all their friends right there. They get to play every day, all day. Now, does she appreciate it today? I hope so. I hope so. I hope you appreciate, now that she has her room, and she's 15 now, so she never comes out of it. I hope she appreciates that room's bigger than that guy's, almost bigger than that guy's whole house.
I think some of those stories, when I would travel with my family, some of the things I remember now, I didn't appreciate as much at the time, as I think they still stick with me. But I wasn't spending, if I did a trip at 15, I wasn't spending the next 3 years professing to my father and my mother how valuable that trip was.
I think that's true.
Hey guys, on that trip, I really learned the value of this, and I articulated it well. But an example of that would be, my dad took us to Morocco one time. Well, he was actually docked in Spain, and he was on deployment. We went over to see him, and then we took a ferry through the Straits of Gibraltar to Morocco.
Nice.
And dude, in Morocco, that's where I remember getting off the bus, and there were kids that were begging as an example for money, and the guide was like, don't give them money. And then explained to us that the reason you don't want to give those kids money is because some of them had one arm, and they would be like, they'd look so sad, and you'd want it. I was like, why won't I? I could give them enough money to feed them for a year. And they said, because literally their parents or their caretakers might remove their arm to make them more effective beggars.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember hearing that.
It's unbelievable.
And it hit so hard that here I am at 49 years old telling you the story, and I was probably 13 when that happened. And there was a bunch of stories like that I can remember from my travels that had a big impact on me. Do you remember any stories where you were where you were particularly scared, or something happened where it kind of frightened you into a new belief?
As a child, or
as a child.
Well, I was mostly scared of my father most of the time. But as far as on those travels,
Hey guys, I want to share something brand new designed for high-performing men like you who want to win at home, not just at work. Our team developed this program over the past 8 years by collecting the best ideas, strategies, and habits from hundreds of men. It's all in one place to give you the best results in the shortest amount of time, because if you're a married man with kids and a business, there is no time to waste. This experience creates deep transformation, not just taking notes and talking about change. It's about doing what matters now so you don't miss the moments when your kids need you the most. These opportunities will come and go very quickly. It's also about building a marriage that shows your kids what real love looks like, creating an environment where they and you thrive. Look, marriage is tough. I've personally walked the line of divorce several times, and without the tools I've gained from this community, I might not be married today. And it's not just about being a great dad or a husband. It's about fulfilling your personal mission, thriving as a man, making an impact through your work, gaining time freedom, financial freedom, traveling the world, and giving to the causes you care about. This program is designed to keep you mentally, physically, and spiritually strong. You do not need to do this alone. Our badass community of intentional fathers are going to help you raise the bar. You're going to learn from each other, hold each other accountable, find your blind spots, and achieve success most dads will never see. It's time to dig deep, gain clarity, and create real change starting now. If you're ready to evolve, visit frontrowdads.com today. We've got limited spots available for this brand new program.
When we were hitchhiking around England, my brother and I, we met a bunch of punks. And at first, they were pretty aggressive with us. But then they just adopted us. Once they found out we were just two kids traveling on our own, they took us with them to their club. And they played punk music. And they were in a mosh pit just bouncing off of each other, which we went into. They bounce off each other and spit on each other. It's the strangest thing. Yeah. But they were gentle with us. They didn't they would hit each other hard, but they kind of bounced gently on us, and they hung out with us, and they kind of adopted us. But we did find our tent, maybe not in that same area, trash. So somebody had gone and cut our tent up with a knife, and thrown all our shit into the river. We'd camped by a river. We were just finding a place.
You
to
were
camp.
camping.
We were camping. Isn't that wild? Not even legally.
Yeah.
I remember the first night we did this journey, we just said, okay, we're going to ride 5 stations and we'll get off at that station. So we rode 5 stations. We got off at that station and started walking. It was the middle of nowhere, and it's just getting darker and darker. So we eventually looked at each other and we just set up our tent literally right beside the road and slept that night in a tent.
Did you ever ask your mom and dad why they decided to do this? Did they
go
tell you the
right
origin story?
No, I think they believed in travel.
Yeah.
They believed in independent children. I mean, my dad was the kind that if you cut yourself, I remember one time my brother's swinging a hammer and he misses and hits his knee.
Yeah.
And he starts bawling. He's like, I'm maybe 10, he's maybe 14. And my dad's like, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Pulls out his watch.
Yep.
That's how long you get to cry.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I don't want to use a hammer. Thank God he's the oldest. So, I don't remember being scared on that trip, because it's almost like you button down fear to some degree, and you just do, you just keep walking.
Yeah.
Now, when I was older, I hitchhiked around the world, and I had a few moments where I felt like I was in a dangerous situation, but I don't remember anything that fearful. And you also learn, it's funny, you learn to just connect with people so quickly.
Yeah.
Because after our tent got torn, we went, and we had enough money for youth hostels, but not all these towns had youth hostels. Yeah. We went to a little pub, and we were kind of drinking cider or whatever, and I was playing on the fruit machine, which is like a slot machine, and I won the jackpot 3 times in a row. And then my brother's like, you should buy everyone in here a drink. So I was like, like 10 pounds or something. So we bought everyone a drink. And then one of them came up to us and said, why don't you come stay with us? And she sewed the tent back together. So like a Welsh woman. put us. I can't remember if we slept in their house or somewhere, and then literally within 24 hours she'd fixed our tent, and then we set our tent up in her garden, and we stayed in her garden. So, yeah, never afraid. I also got drunk for the first time on that trip, where in England they're not really big on carding, so I'm like 14, and they just keep serving me, and the next thing you know, I can't stand up, and the bartender comes to my brother and says, "You need to get him out of here." So my brother carries me to the restroom and just lays me on the floor in a stall. And I remember laying there with my feet on the cold floor in the pooping area, right? Like in a toilet, in a stall, watching people's feet come in, they go pee, and then they'd walk back out. And that's all I was like, "Oh." And then when he was done with whatever he was doing, he came and picked me up because our tent was like 2 miles away.
Yeah.
He carried me back to the tent. He kept saying, "If you don't start walking, I'm going to leave you here." And I'm like, "I'm trying to walk." I was trying to get my feet moving, but they weren't moving. Then he got me to the tent, and he just took me by like I was a little kid, remember? And he's 4 years older, so he took me by my pants and my shirt, and he just threw me in the tent. And I think there was a girl that he was trying to hit on or whatever, so there was something going on with him and that girl the whole time. But he just threw me in the tent.
Dude, I'm trying to picture Tiger going on a camping trip right now, or no, sorry, not a camping trip, but an adventure like you're talking about, where he is camping, and that it does bring me to. I'm going to build a bridge here to our conversation talking about your trip with Luke, because Tiger did go to Nepal,
with my daughter,
with Bella,
yeah,
which is awesome. And what was 9 other kids, or about
something like that, a dozen, maybe 14 or something. Yeah.
And I did sense the freedom that he experienced, and then the vibration of that, the after effect of that when he came home.
Yeah.
And
they loved it, those kids. They wanted to go back.
Dude, so good. And I felt it in him telling the story, to people that with pride that he did this. Mm-hmm. And the cool things, bungee jumping, hiking in the Himalayas, visiting the school with the kids, like all of that, so great. And I guess the thing that I want to make, I just want to put an exclamation point on this for myself, but also for anybody listening that's thinking about how they approach this with their kids, is that creating opportunities for your kids to have freedom feels like a big pattern interrupt in Tiger's life. The structure that we have and the rules that he has, and especially now with his current school, a lot more structure, space in his life on trips like this where you can go out and really have an adventure.
So much.
Like
so much
that I want to continue to talk about in this community. I want to hear stories, and by telling these stories, I think men start thinking about it. And they're like, yeah, what adventure did I go on? And what adventure do I want for my kids? And how do I make that happen? Ali, one of our guys, gave a big speech at Front Row Dads Live about adventure. And I can't tell you how many other guys in the group have now started just putting adventures together and being like, I want more adventure in my life. So I'm saying that because I want to put an exclamation point for myself too, to keep coming back to that. But also to build a bridge to Luke, because you took Luke on this grand adventure. I'm looking at this picture now, which you'll have to tell me all about. But I wanted to capture this story with you, not only because as a friend I'm interested, and I haven't heard the whole story yet, but I wanted all the other guys to hear the story. And I also had this vision that Luke, 20 years from now, stumbles upon this interview somehow. And unless you had told this story somewhere else, I wanted to encapsulate this for time.
Beautiful.
So tell me about the story, man. You can tell me how it came to be, or jump into the day one of it, however you want to get into it.
So there you have like my history of adventure. And it's so interesting you had mentioned men want more adventure, because we built GoBundance with one of our pillars as bucket list adventures, right?
Such a great
So for me, I think just so many adventures. My whole life is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so it's like an addiction for me to, like, every year our family has to go do something, and our family, needs to have these adventures. I took them around the world, as you know, also last year. But the genesis of this story is like, I am unsure what to do. And now you said to me that when Tiger's in Nepal, he is loving the freedom, probably learning so much about himself, that when those kids came back and we were interviewing them, as you probably remember, what was the one thing they wanted? was to go back. They didn't want to be with us. They didn't want the safety of our homes.
Yeah.
And what I think we do as parents is, like, at 15 especially, they're trying to individuate.
Yes.
They want to become their own versions of themselves.
Yeah.
And every time we discipline them or pull them down or make them follow our process, we're inhibiting that process a little bit. And it's okay. We should inhibit it because, you know, if you'd run me at 15 and let me run out the door, it would have been a disaster. And at the same time, we have to respect that process that they're on. And I think with Bella, she also did powder term, which was incredible for her. So I would say Nepal and powder term, if you asked her, were probably her two biggest accomplishments. And that's where she went and learned how to ski and had a whole semester skiing for 6 weeks or whatever it was, 10 weeks maybe. So my question is, John, because I'm at this difficult situation where I have plenty of money. I'm an abundant person. I'm a very wealthy guy. So how do I teach my kids values that doesn't make them, you know, there's no way they're not going to have money. Like, I can try to be as tough as you want. I can try to say, like Warren Buffett, I'm not giving them anything, and yet his son's already a billionaire. It's like there's just no way my son isn't going to have plenty of money and my daughter's not going to have, unless I do something absolutely insane.
Right.
So how do you, like, make sure they're not brats, like not spoiled brats? And my answer, as I'm pondering this, was, what if I took them to do more charitable events? Now, Luke isn't a brat, nor is Bella. But I'm still aware that that could happen. Yeah. And we've all met that rich guy that's just an ass to everybody. And you're like, oh, my God, don't be that. And so I met this guy, Clint Rogers, and Clint is like a big kid. He's just like a kid who works almost exclusively in nonprofits, and he works almost exclusively with the children of Nepal. So I met Clint, and he's talking about these trips he does. I had thought a couple of times of taking Bella with Scott Harrison on a charity water trip to go drill the wells. I'd never made it just never lined up. I never made time for it. I got the impression they didn't really love doing the trips because they're trying to raise bigger money, and it takes a lot of effort to do those trips. So I'd never jumped on one of those trips. I was about to do one, and then COVID hit. So I thought to myself, what do I do to teach Luke gratitude and kindness, right? And my answer is expose him to people that are massively disadvantaged. Expose him to people that have a much tougher life than him, and hopefully that will create gratitude inside of him. And so the answer to myself was, I met Clint. I really liked Clint, and I just felt safe with Clint. And Luke loved Clint. Clint is like a big kid, and when he's in town, Luke's always like, when's Clint coming over? When's Clint coming over? And he came over yesterday, and they did magic tricks. He happens to be in town right now. So I was like, okay, I think I can get behind Clint, and I think a solution for me for some of this fear that I have around the abundance that I'm raising my children with, because keep in mind we have 2 nannies and we have a house cleaner, like I can tell them to clean their room, but the nanny's not going to do it. So unless I want to wake up every day and have that battle, go clean your room. I want you to have her empty the dishwasher. All the things I try to get my kid to do, the nanny does. And if I say to the nanny, don't do it, make Luke does it, she'll still do it. Right. Like, she's a service-driven person, and she can't sit still, and she's trying to serve our family constantly. So I could do better, John. I could insist that dishwasher isn't emptied, but that's not really my personality, because I'm also, let's just roll. Let's just keep life moving forward. So the answer to me was go to Nepal, take Luke, and have this experience. So I did it. So we get on a plane. It's like 30 hours to get there. Luke loves it because I don't limit his screen time. So he's on his iPad the entire time. We're in business class, so we're not learning about how suffering it is. We've got the flatbed, the ice cream sundaes, a million movies. But we get there, and we get to Nepal, and we meet Clint, and they take us straight to our hotel. And yeah, it's like an adventure. Now, I thought there'd be other kids on the trip, but there weren't. Luke was the only kid. And then we get a day of sightseeing. And so we go to this temple right off the bat, and there's like a funeral going on. And if you've ever been to India or Nepal.
No, I haven't.
Okay, when people die, they don't put them in a coffin. They just carry around the dead body, and they wash their feet, and they bury them almost immediately. So there's something they have there that they bury them within hours. So it just so happens that we're at this temple, and there's a dead guy being carried around, and a mass of people. So people were telling me he must have been pretty famous or popular or something. There's like 300 people there. So we get a point of vantage where we can watch, and now Luke's seeing his first ever dead body. Wow. And he's watching them wash his feet and touch his forehead, and then they take him to the funeral pyre and they spin him around 3 times, and they do all these, and then they burn the body. That's what they do there. They just burn the body. So I didn't stay to watch that body burn, but when we realized that, we looked over, there was another fire just going out where they burned another body.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? So Luke gets that experience. We see the monkeys but he's still kind of clinging to me at this point. He's a little bit like shy, and he's seeing everything. And then we go that night, and we brought gifts, and we're in Kathmandu, and we go meet the first orphanage. We go to the first orphanage, and I think there was 60 kids at this orphanage living in a small house, and we bring them all these beads, and all these other Westerners are with us. There's like a dozen of us, and we just start playing with the kids. And pretty soon, like, Luke is really stuck with me until he realizes we brought them Frisbees and beads that, I get to show them like how to do this stuff. So he starts teaching them how to play the Frisbee. And there's always a couple kids that'll rush over and just start being with Luke, or there's always like the ones that feel comfortable. And so he got more and more comfortable. And the next thing you knew, we spent like 5 or 6 hours in those kids' vortex.
Wow.
And Luke got more and more comfortable. One of them was wrestling with him, and he tried to teach him how to play Uno. And I just saw him come out of his shell, and I have some great pictures of him with like the older girls who just think he's so cute, and they looking at me knowingly, and I just saw him kind of come out of himself and find some Lukeness, some of his leadership capacity. And watch the other kids embrace him and bring him forward. So
and while this is all happening, is your role are you just observing Luke, or are you doing something else while he's?
All of us are engaged with the kids. So imagine a dozen Westerners doing whatever you chose to do with the kids. Some people are dancing with the kids. A lot of people are making beads with the kids. That's what I chose to do because I brought the beads. Those little bracelets. And then as time goes on, they had made a beautiful welcome mat for us. Then we sit down, and the kids have prepared a dance for us, and they have prepared a meal. I didn't actually eat the meal because I was a little concerned. I didn't want to get sick, but I kind of ate like the crackers, And then we sit with the runner of the orphanage, and we heard about her problems and where she's come from. And she was apparently a 15-year-old that just suddenly met 3 kids that were living on the street and took them into her house.
Wow.
Now she's 30, and she has 60 kids. This is all she's ever done.
Oh, wow.
We hear about their challenges, their problems. But now
what are their challenges and problems?
Oh, my gosh. You wouldn't believe it. It's crazy.
The first obvious ones, like...
Just the money.
Yeah, right.
Right. There's a lot of corruption there. In fact, there are charities set up, orphanages set up just to make money for the owners of the orphanages.
I've heard that.
And so Clint said to me very clearly, he goes, they might ask you for money, but please, please, please give us the money. We have some guys that live here that audit and make sure the money's going to the right places. And so we did that. We respected that. And she just told us how she'd gone from, 3 kids to like 20 kids to 30 kids and now 60 kids. And the challenges and the struggles and the money. And then like the city has this rule that when the kids turn 18, they have to get out. They have to leave the orphanage. That's the government. But the problem is they're not really ready at 18. They're still pretty vulnerable. So you're trying to give them skills as they come up, but 18 to 21 is a very vulnerable window of time for these kids. So Clint is trying to figure out how to bridge that. A certain number of them can work for the orphanage, so you got to get the money for them. It costs $30,000 a year for 30 kids. She had 2 buildings, so basically 2 different locations with 30 kids each. I think it's more like $35,000 a year, so it's about $1,200 a year per kid, not counting exceptional problems. The heater goes out, or their one car breaks down, or these different things. It's just interesting. Now, Luke isn't interested in any of that, right? Luke wants to play Uno. He's made a buddy he's wrestling with who's a bigger kid. So this was just day one. This was our intro. You and I could get into the mechanics of what they need over there, but it's actually not what I was there for. Does that make sense? I'm learning more about that because I ended up joining the Ancient Secrets board.
Yeah.
And I'm learning more and more about how we can help more and more kids. But this trip was for Luke to step out of his shell. Because he's kind of been a shy kid. I've noticed he's come out a lot more since his trip, but it also could be 7 to 8. Like, there's also these phases.
The grade 8?
It's a grade 8. Yeah. The 8, they kind of step it into their power a lot more. And at 6, he was much more like shy, almost to a point where I was slightly worried about like whether but again, it's my first boy. Girls are way more animated, much, much quicker. Bella was really animated very early. But now he's definitely like talking more and more in charge and bossing around more. And whether this trip was part of that or is all just happening at the same time. So that's day one. So day one, we had this beautiful experience. I'm in love with these kids. I feel their heart. And the one thing you'll find about the kids in Nepal is, you and I have a beautiful community. You've created a beautiful community with Front Row Dads. A lot of Americans struggle with community. Mm-hmm. When I was building my wealth, I didn't know any of my neighbors. I didn't really want friends. Right. I just worked. I had so much stimulation at work from people that all of my friends had some purpose for me at work, right? Finally, when I felt like I had enough money, I started actually developing real friends, which is where you and Tot come in and so many other people. Those kids have community. They have community that we could only dream of. And I made a speech on the last night to the kids, and I was like, you got to know that the one thing you guys have, everybody wants it, which is a community that loves you and stands by you. They have each other's back.
That's cool.
One of the kids, the little kid falls over, the bigger kids come and pick him up. Like the kids, the one mom with a couple helpers is not enough. The 30 kids are family to each other, and they're incredible. I mean, the level of love. Imagine having 30 brothers and sisters that don't just love you, but there's scarcity, so they look out for one another because of that scarcity. When there's abundance, you're like fighting over who gets the
Dude, it does make you wonder, like, who's the lucky one.
I know, it does.
Especially when you hear about, like, in Western cultures where somebody is just indulging in all the sweets and processed foods and social media.
It's so horrible. It's
depressed,
so horrible. I know.
And diseased
Anxious.
And all the things. It's like there's an epidemic there too.
Yeah. I just read that
Different
book,
problem.
The Anxious Generation, and you see the TikTok and the Facebook and literally my daughter can go in her room, and we try to have some rules around electronics. We're not rigid, but we're also not super flexible. But literally the other day, she had 4 kids over for a sleepover, and the 5 of them were playing Roblox while watching a movie.
Yeah,
like,
right.
I can't stop that because that's how they interact.
Yeah.
Maybe I could. I could be rigid about it, but I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to derail us. So Luke, day one.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, but let me tell you where they're not lucky.
Yeah.
Because they are lucky they have each
sure.
other. And that love they feel, you feel it. Yeah. Like it opens your heart to be in such a loving environment. But when they hit 18, 19, 20, it's like a dead end. There's nowhere to go. Like, I'm not saying they don't have great lives. I don't know. I haven't followed up with all of them. But I can tell you that it gets harder and harder. The corruption shows up in a big way, right? Because over there, I think there's so little that people are like, well, if I can get something, I'm taking it. Like when you're still an innocent child, you don't think that way. Yeah. But when you're 28 years old and you got 4 kids and you're suddenly a inspector and you can say, hey, give me like $20 and I'll improve your inspection, and they're getting paid $1 a month or whatever it is. I'm making it up, but I think the average income over there is like $400 a month. That's where it shows up, right? That's where we're lucky and we're blessed. But for sure, those kids are alive and they're wide awake, and there's a beauty there. So that's day one. We go back to the hotel. Of course, I'm trying to get from Luke, like, what did you sense from that? What did you feel? And he's just too young. There's nothing like...
He played.
Yeah, he played.
He made a couple friends. He played.
Friends. They gave him a lot of attention.
That's what I mean. Like, it's hard probably for him to articulate the impact that it might have made at that moment.
Exactly.
But I've got to believe, like, what a story to tell. What a story to know that you were a part of that, you did that. But also, again, I'm going to try to keep it on track for the story itself. But for you, dude, like, for Luke to be able to tell the story that his dad took him to Nepal and did this, like, what a great story of dad.
Yeah.
Too, man. You could do lots of things with your time, and
well, I'm so blessed. I mean, I just love my kids.
Yeah.
I'm also an older dad.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the number one lesson I've learned through my kids, because I have a 37-year-old daughter who has a baby, so I'm a grandfather. Then I have a 16-year-old kid and an 8-year-old kid. Someone pointed out to me that the last 3 generations, I have a kid from each generation. I don't have a beta yet, so the new ones are called beta. Who came up with that name anyway? Why would you want to be
I'm not sure.
That's the newest generation. They're called the betas. My son's an alpha. That's good.
We have to go through the beta to get to the champion
I guess so.
generation.
But I feel like the lesson I've learned is just time and presence and time and presence. Not presence with a T, but presence. Just the more you can do with them, the better.
Yeah.
So yes, I love that time we had, and I want to do it again, and I think he'll do it with me again. Now, So then after that, we spent the next day with the kids too, and I might have muddled those days up a little bit. We might have had an intro, like easy day, and then the longer day. And then we got in a bus and we went up to the mountain home, and the mountain kids. So this is 30 kids that live in an orphanage like an hour and a half out of Kathmandu. So we went up there. So we'd been in a pretty luxe hotel. Now we went to a luxe for that area, but for me and Luke, definitely not luxe. Like a basic hotel, cold water, the hot water wasn't working and stuff like that. And so but it's got a beautiful view. Like even the slums there on that hour and a half way out have incredible views because it's way up high above Kathmandu in the Himalayas. So then we go meet these kids, and we have kind of a repeat, but we spent like 3 days with these kids. And these mountain home kids, talk about a vortex of love, was a whole nother level of like wrapping us in. And I think it's, whether it's because I wasn't settled into my soul yet, because I'm coming from the long flight and it's a bustling city. So in Kathmandu, you're still fighting your way through the city.
Yeah.
Luke and I went for a long walk. We forget this about kids too. Like I'm thinking, let's go explore the city. And we're like, 5 blocks in. He's like, can we sit down? Yeah, I'm tired. Can we take a cab? I'm like, no, let's just keep walking. We'll play a game. Who sees the first dog? There's dogs all over the place and cows and all the sidewalks are under construction. Like it's just a mess. Like you and I would think that city is a mess. That's why we're so lucky in America. We just take it so much for granted. We have a pothole. We're like, why don't they repair that pothole?
Yeah.
And in Nepal, it's all a pothole, basically. There's like a nonstop challenge. So we're in this mountain home, and we go to see these kids. And when we get there, they've assigned a kid per person. So they've got our names on a plaque. And we walk in, we go through a ceremony, we get the dot. And I don't know what the dot means, but I get the red dot on my forehead, and I get the lei or whatever, the flowers that actually just irritate your neck, but they look really pretty. And then we have kids. So Luke got assigned a kid called Tilak and another kid called Babek. So he got 2. And I got this lovely girl, and I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember her name, but she was really sweet. She actually couldn't speak a lick of English, whereas Tilak could. And so then Luke is just off with Tilak. And you can see him, like, he's still nervous. He's like, Dad, hey, Dad. Like, he's trying to stay with me. But as he got more and more comfortable, he gets more comfortable going off with the kids. Tilak is like a charismatic, he's a leader. He's one of 4 brothers that are there, so he has that confidence. He's the younger one, and he just super warm. You can actually see it in his face, like the guy in left in the orange. He's just like confident and did a great job of embracing Luke. He's probably 9 and Luke's 8. And he just lent right into him. And then we did crafts together, and they asked us to do funny things. Like, would we be willing to put a talent show on? So the next day, those of us that chose would do a talent show. And so me and Luke danced together. And then we threw the Frisbee. We got one of the kids to come out, and we just threw a Frisbee in a circle as fast as we could. And it was fun. And then all kinds of, like, one guy our Western guys walked around on his hands. And then this girl did like through the forest, that one that goes like, gonna see a bear, walk through the forest. You remember that one anyway? So I'm like,
a little bit, yeah.
So that was nice. And we're just like connecting. And our hotel is like walking distance to this one. So we didn't have to take a cab. So then it's just like, and then it turns into them doing a dance for us again, them doing entertainment for us. And we're just getting warmer and warmer. We had dinner with them. And this group of kids we just really connected with. And Luke will say today that he remembers Tilak, and he gave Tilak his favorite shoes, which were probably too small for Tilak, and his favorite pajamas, which Tilak allegedly wore for like 2 weeks straight. They had to peel them off of him, and they were like really fuzzy, warm pajamas. And so we really emphasize that too, how generous of Luke to give away. Like, he's wearing pajamas there. My son, I think my son can tell he's going to be wealthy because he just either wears pajamas or underwear. Like, that's it. When he's in my house, he's like, I'm just wearing pajamas. I'm like, oh, okay, I can see.
He has a robe. He has a silk robe.
He's got a silk robe. But he gave away his, like, those are dinosaur pajamas. And Tilak wore them nonstop. And yeah, that was beautiful. I began to notice in myself then, John, that the longer, like I feel about Tiger and Ocean, like your kids are in my community, they're like my kids. But as I was there with these kids for 3 days, I began to notice, like, I want to know the story of the Tilak. I don't want to know just Tilak right now. And there's another young lady who's older, 17, about to get out, and her name was Sophia. And I'm like, I want to know Sophia's story. Like, where is she going to go? And I felt more and more attached to the kids. But yeah, they did an incredible job there. And then the next thing you know, Luke's showing them stuff, showing them how to throw the Frisbee. We brought jump ropes. And they're really good jump ropers, so they were teaching Luke how to jump rope. You know, he wanted to be the one teaching them, but pretty soon he realized they were way advanced.
Yeah.
So there's just like so much interaction. We went on a big hike the next day together up to this shrine up in the mountains. And it was locked, but all the kids climbed over. So Luke just climbed over. Like, I'm like, wow, that's unlike my son to be kind of like jumping over. And then he found a big stick, looked like a scepter or a staff. And then he climbed back over with his scepter, which I have pictures of. It was like this weirdly shaped piece of wood that like opened up at the top like a torch. So it looked like a wizard's scepter.
Yeah.
And he's carrying that around. And then he knighted T-Lock. He did, I knight you in the name of whatever. And it, like, it's just all this stuff coming. And he's just come out of himself. Because he feels so safe with the kids. It was just really fun to watch. And he began to really like 3 or 4 of the adults too. And I saw him like just go jump on one of their laps or just go like knock on their door and see what was going on. And we had a girl next to us and he climbed. He'd go over to the balcony and like stare in. Hey, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, that's disrespectful. Like, let that poor woman have some space.
Yeah.
But I also really appreciated that he was feeling that comfortable with her and that brave. So I got to see Luke open up in a way that I haven't seen him open up before.
What do you think are the ingredients that allowed him to do that? Because he's around other people. You have lots of friends that come to your house. He's got lots of opportunity to do that in a variety of environments. What do you think about this was special?
Well, he'll do it with his friends at home.
Yeah.
So he's definitely not like with Ocean. He'll boss Ocean around. Ocean bosses him around. They both boss each other around, right? But but he won't usually do it with adults. I think it was the exposure, the time we were together. The beauty of the kids, the fact that all the adults were also playing full out and trying to do like stuff and shows, and I think he just got really comfortable, and he saw that he was safe with these adults, and he played into those and he started running around like when we were all sitting like tapping him on the head and stuff, like just being very playful and very cheeky, which I think's important and healthy.
How did he do with the food?
The food's freaking hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like, that was the one thing that was difficult, like, was finding what you could eat. And on the last few days, he got sick, unfortunately. There was, like, we finally got mango in this mountain hotel, and we tried a little, and he loved it. So I was like, just chow down. And I probably, in hindsight, if I really thought, that was probably the culprit, because he literally ate, like, 4 mangoes. But he then got diarrhea.
Yeah.
Like, he got diarrhea. And that kind of like took our trip to a different place. And that's the thing he remembers, unfortunately, is like, oh, I got sick. I'm like, yeah, but you had so much fun before you got sick.
Yeah.
And that's where he actually, crapped on himself too. Because, you know that thing when you think you're farting, but you're actually not. And I'm like, oh,
totally.
Back to the room.
Been there.
But we got some medicine from some of the locals that seemed to clean up pretty quick. It happened to be on our flight all the way home. But yeah, we got to see monkeys, and we got to go feed the monkeys, and they would take food out of our hands. We got to see temples. It was so funny, John, also, because there was a really wealthy guy there from Sri Lanka. He's one of the wealthiest guys in Sri Lanka. And he said to me, and this is right before Halloween, I think, but he said to me, why don't you come with me to Sri Lanka? I have a house up in the mountains. We're going to get there by helicopter, and then we're going to fly to see a couple charities in Sri Lanka and stuff like that. And I'm like, that sounds really good. However, it's Halloween in 2 days.
Yeah.
I got to take my son home. And that's a hard commitment. I can't stay, but it would have been super fun to take that adventure to the next level.
Have you thought about taking Bella to do this?
I don't know about you, John, but at 15, I feel like I've lost the say-so over what Bella does. Mike is thinking of going back in March, right on top of Bella's spring break, and I'm going to invite her. I got to check with Tracy first. So there's a hierarchy. See if Tracy wants to go. And then I've got to ask Bella, but I'm almost certain she'll say no.
Yeah.
And then I could force it, but I don't really feel like I want to. At this age, she's 15. She'll be 16 this year. I don't know about you, what you remember about being 15 or 16. But I think it's time for her to decide what she wants to do with her life. And I don't think it's up to me to tell her anymore.
Dude, I'm wrestling with this
Are you?
now.
Yeah.
Literally this morning, I had this conversation with Tatiana about how many boundaries do I want with Tiger and where do I want to just let him make up his mind, because I see both. I mean, I see power in both of those things. Ultimately, my answer to every dad, and especially you as a friend, would always be the same, and that's trust yourself, because nobody's going to know better than you. And and you can also change your mind. Tuesday it could be one answer, and Wednesday it could be another, and it's situational and all those things. But you're right that in many ways there should be a graduation towards autonomy and sovereignty in a way that all of their decisions are their own. And it shouldn't be an immediate, like, you're 17 and 364 days, and tomorrow you finally have all the freedom you could ever want.
Absolutely.
I had all the controls. So I'm all about the journey to adulthood right now. And at some time I'm still putting down my dad like authority and going, yeah, I'm all about you making your own decisions. And on this one, you still want a roof over your head and you want to eat. This is what we're doing.
You got to come.
So I don't know what's the right answer.
Maybe if you came with us,
yeah,
Bella would be more willing to go. But here's the thing that I believe. One is Bella's not, if she was doing nothing, I would be more forceful.
Yeah.
She is doing animation. She's playing guitar. She's singing. She's gotten A's and B's at school. She has a really good group of friends that I really like.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like now is when she gets a spring break and she has friends, I don't feel like it's okay for me to say, hey, you don't get your spring break with your friends. Totally. I just don't feel that way. And maybe it's because I moved so much, John, that finding friends was hard for me. Like I didn't have that anchoring of my buddies that I'd known my whole life. So I have a respect for friends that, maybe is over warranted. If she was, and I have a rule that she has to do something physical. Yeah. She's not quite hitting what I would like to do on that. I'd like her to do more physical. We have a rule that our kids have to be in sports, and they only get screens allegedly an hour a day, but it ends up probably averaging more than that. And they have to be on purpose with something in their lives. That's our kind of rule. They have to be learning something, which is easy because they're in school. When I was 15, I had a job. I was working construction. At 16, I was working landscape gardening. At 17, I started a lawn mowing company. But I can't let my background be theirs, because I actually would never raise my kids the way I was raised. Yeah. But I'm so glad I was raised that way.
Does that make sense? Of course.
But I see my brother. I'm not sure it was quite the same experience for him. It's got, like, there's a risk when you push kids that hard, because they might just go, it's too much work. I'm just going to mail it in.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons that when I ask, like, men who are elders, and I'm talking 70, 80-year-old men who have raised kids that are grandfathers, they're well down the road, the answer when I'm like, what's the wisdom? It's usually something simple. In fact, the advice gets tighter and smaller in its delivery the older the men get.
It's something like, they're going to be fine, quit worrying about it.
Yeah, and love them.
Just love them.
Just love them. It's literally, that's what it becomes.
Yeah.
Younger men, it's like, well, you do these 72 things and you'll raise great kids, but the old guys are like, just love them.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
There's so much out of your control. And I think that if that's the core, if that's the foundation.
And that's what I've tried to do with Bella. When I notice she walks in and she kind of looks at me like I'm annoying, which happens a lot now, and hurts my feelings a little bit. Yep. But I'll just say to her, every time you walk in the room, it just lightens my heart. I'll say, like, every time I see her, I give her hugs all the time. Yeah. And she's starting to come around a little. Like, there was a little bit when she was very resistant to me. I feel her coming around. And I don't think it's coming around from a point of view of, like, because I've been so good at loving her. I think she's kind of like, he keeps trying. Yeah. I'll just give him a hug back.
It's so great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I'm also very clearly aware, John, she's a smart 15-year-old being that's going through whatever she's going through, and her experience of life isn't mine.
Totally.
And I can't really find that much commonality between the go hard, push hard, be strong, don't cry kind of childhood I had, and the social media pressure, whatever's going on with all that stuff, where they know everything and they have everything at their fingertips, and there's not enough outside at all. I can't relate to that. So I'm not, I find when I come into a room, I'm like, you can clean this place up. Like I go into like critical mode, and I don't really want to do that either. Right. So she's going to be great. The other thing I don't think we realize about our kids is they're going to be fine. Yeah. They're smart. They're lucky.
I agree with that.
Yeah. The old poem of Rumi that's my favorite is that for children, it's, you are not the arrow nor the archer, you're the bow. So my job as I view it, is to provide a safe structure, a structure where my kids have opportunity to be exposed to things. But I'm not the arrow, I'm not the kid, and I'm not the archer. Wherever they're going is in God's hands, somebody else's hands, their hands, however you want to look at it. My job's just to keep exposing them. And how cool will it be if I go back, which I want to, and if I stay in this relationship with these children, and if Luke comes with me, what if he was 17 and still had a relationship with T-Lock?
Right.
You know, what if he's graduating high school, graduating college, and still has a relationship with a kid in Nepal that grew up in an orphan home?
Yeah.
I think that will be a very enriching relationship. And I only say if because I am committed, and I also, just like you with the Army men, I know how life is. Like there's a lot of things that could happen between here and there, and to stay in it. I met this incredible woman on this board, like just incredibly bright, graduated valedictorian from Stanford, and with a degree in mathematics. I know, like that's not me. And she's 33 years old, and she's on the board, but she's from Tibet. And she said, you know what these kids need more than anything is not for people to show up and then leave. They need people to show up and keep showing up. And I'm like, oh, that's really convicting. So if I'm going to do that, I have to decide to stay in somehow, some way, for a longer period of time. And her story was incredible, of like fleeing Tibet when the Chinese came in and living in India as guests and all the rest of it. But yeah. But I'll go back to the gift those kids have. The kids have this community that when you're with them for 2 days, you don't really want to leave. Like your heart opens up in a way, and that's what I found. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to see these kids grow up. I want to be around them.
What of that, the essence of what you just shared right now, what do you want to bring back home to Austin and infuse into your community, our community? Is there a spirit there? Is there an action there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all doing it.
Yeah.
I know that you're doing the work. I'm doing the work. To me, the vulnerability and the love, they have unconditional love, those kids. They're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go. They're just together. And they look out for each other. And the guides, you know, the humans that are at the top of the chain that are looking after them, you know, they're not perfect. They're not flawless. They're doing the best they can, and I like some more than others. But together, that little ship, if you will, of orphan kids, they got nowhere else to go. There's only down from where they are. So that container, holding that container together with that integrity and that love for one another. I mean, as I get older, John, and you and I have talked a bit about this, it's like all the accomplishments don't matter, all the building. It's just more like the love. How can I be more of love? With and for my community? How can I be more of integrity and transparency with and for my community? I haven't always been that way. I've been, what can I get for me? How can I create safety for me by building wealth?
Yeah. Yeah. And now I see you, though, sharing so much of that, you know, so openly and with love. I mean, that's what I see. I mean, I know this version of David, right? I didn't know all the other versions of David, and that's okay. That was part of that journey, and that I get to be part of this one. But that's what I see, man, is you loving people where they are. As I see you loving on people and respecting people and caring for people that can't do a lot for you in the material world outside of like the most important thing they can do for you, which is to see you and to love you and to hold you in that way. Yeah. Right. So they can do that.
Yeah. And that's what these kids have. They didn't choose each other.
Yeah.
They didn't choose to be orphans.
Yeah.
While we were there were two kids that, well, right after we left, that their parents, there was that earthquake, and the mom was already dead, and then the dad died. So they got like a 3 and a 5-year-old that just came into the house. And they were all, when they found them, because they'd been living on the streets, they were covered in cracked skin and had some kind of skin condition. And then they showed them then, and then they showed them a month later. Are like healed and shiny and happy, although I'm sure still at some level dealing with some trauma. But they didn't choose each other, you know. And in the same way, I think with my community, we get to choose people. You didn't really know me in my first, my 30s and 40s, but yeah, right now it's like about the community and choosing a group of people that you're like, hey, we're here for one another. Let's see how we can help one another out. Not we all bring different strengths and different weaknesses, but how can we show up for each other? Yeah,
there's this beautiful intersection between I get to choose anything I want and where are we going, and the intersection of life has chosen for me and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
There's everywhere to go and there's nowhere to go. Yeah. And when I think about the science behind not having choice, and I remember reading Do you remember Chip and Dan Heath, the Heath brothers? They wrote these incredible books, series of books. Decisive, Switch.
No.
Oh, man, these are great books. And they're great books because they're all rooted in amazing stories and the science behind the story, which is my favorite kind of reading, right? Give me the story and then tell me the science behind it. It's like my favorite kind. The Heath brothers are the best at that, I think. And so anyway, there's this one study and story, which I'm not going to try to tell you exactly what it was, but the spirit of it I remember, and that it had something to do with like buyer's remorse. Like if you could return it, you'd have these like, did I buy the right thing? Should I return that? Versus like you got that it was yours, you can't return it, and people loved it, because they're like, I can't return it, so I'm going to find a way to love it.
Yeah.
There is something beautiful about that, playing in that energy of I can always leave you. I can always go somewhere else. I can always escape this moment, right? Because I have so much choice and opportunity to, this is the person I'm with. This is the moment that I'm given. I'm going to lean in all the way right now.
Yeah.
And playing in both of those is really powerful. I don't think one is the answer. I think it's holding space for both. But that's what I see you doing. I see you having a lot of options, a lot of places you can go, a lot of people you could be around, and at the same time, fully accepting and leaning in. Like was it last night you were talking to Tatiana, I think? And I was just like, I don't know that I would want to talk with somebody at 8 o'clock at night for 15 minutes. You were just chatting, and she can be really chatty and like want to just talk. And I remember thinking as you were having this conversation, I was like, man, so fortunate to have David in our life. So fortunate that he just can love on Tatiana and hold space in the way that you do. So I want to honor you for that. I want to honor you for playing in the intersection of you can do anything you want and you're embracing the people that you're.
Well, the gift you're giving me, John, and that my community gives me, because I love our community.
Yeah.
I love you, Tim, Mel, Steph, Jer, all these people that are in my life, is that I get to love you. And yes, it's a choice. I could leave at any moment. You could leave at any moment. We can all do that. And I would say in my past, because of all the moves, I did a lot of that, like of loving for a purpose. But I get to be myself with you, and like as I see myself through your eyes, Tot's eyes, different people's eyes, slowly bring down the walls that I know that I built as a young man, that we all build. Yeah. Everyone builds walls, but I built a lot of them, and they're pretty big. Yeah. And I'm getting to bring them down and sort of stand in my heart energy. Like you said, just be love. How much can you stay in love without affection, without affectation, without trying to get something out of something? And with my wife especially, like that journey of being willing to be seen fully by her and seeing her fully, and then choosing to stay with that. That's what the kids, again, the 2 days I'm with them, I'm like, oh wow, this feels like being on some kind of medicine. Like I don't want to leave these kids. I love these kids. And yes, I want to get back to my house and my car and all my comfortable things, but there's also like, they're so true, and they're just playing and being there. And me as the adult, I can see all the risks to their life. I can see the things I want to protect them from, and all the things that could show up to make their lives more difficult as they grow into adulthood. Such a journey. And being with my family and my wife and my kids, and just trying to bring that energy home, and not be the guy that walks into my daughter's room and says, "Are you not going to clean this room up?" But be like, "I love you. Yeah, I'm just here. Like, I don't even understand you right now, and I'm pretty sure you don't understand me, but I love you, and I'm here to just let you know that." Yeah. And sometimes, she'll be like, my daughter will be like, "Hey, you should watch this whole manga with me," or what, because she loves manga. And I'll watch like one show. I'm like, I can't watch that. It's too stimulating. There's too much going on for me to really. And she's like, "If you watched it, you would know more, and we could talk about it." I'm like, I'm not sure I can do that for you, but I can love you, and I do love you.
It's so funny, man. I think about like Tigers into the Fast and the Furious right now, and I feel like I suffered through the Fast and the Furious 7 the other night, and I was like, I'm doing this because I love you, dude. Yeah.
My kids are always like, "You're always on your phone when we watch movies." I'm like, that's because I know all the stories. I can tell, I'm sorry that I'm on my phone. I'm going to try to put it down. And then I put it down. I'm like,
Dude, talk to me. Let's wrap with this. And is there anything else you wanted to share about the trip, by the way, just to close that up? Is there anything on your mind about that?
I think, like I'm on the board now and I am respectful, just like that kid sending you the army.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% committed yet. I'm like, how hard do I want to commit to this? But right now I'm committed, and at the very least I'm going to write checks. I think I'll go back. But, they had the kids paint a picture for us. In this other picture you'll see of the two kids holding hands silhouetted against the moon was painted by one of the children in the orphanage. And they gave it to all the board members. We got to pick one of the many pictures that were there. And I think the level of commitment that I want to make and whether I can integrate that, it's a long way to Nepal, dude.
Yeah.
It's like 30 hours.
Yeah, it's a big trip.
But can I integrate a relationship with these children, with Luke, my son, for a lifetime? And I think if the answer is yes, and I'll find something, whether it's Nepal or not, I think Luke's life will be enriched because of that, as will mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you sharing the story. Let's wrap with the vision for the Osborn family.
Yeah.
Paint a picture to me about what you see for your family into the future, year from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is.
Yeah, sure. I have a beautiful grandbaby and my oldest daughter and her wife, so I have like those kids. We just had our first ever New Year's together for like 7 days, where it was just my core kids and my wife and my grandbaby, and it was super fun. Very chill, very calm, and very warm and affectionate and just full of love. So I think kindling that love, like loving Bella hard through whatever she's going through and wherever she ends up going with her life. Because, the thing we talked about earlier, she's 15, almost 16, 17, 18. You do the math. That's 2 years and 3 months. And then she's 18. And maybe she's sticking around till she's 19. I don't know. So maybe we got 3 years. And then it's college, and then she's gone, right? So my goal with my family is to love them hard, make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep them engaged in something that they're purposeful and passionate about. Make sure they have a charitable reason, and then, love my wife hard. I don't know about you, but I find the loving of the wife is the hardest part. Like, that's the part that's where the work really is. And I think the more I work there for her and I to stay witnessing one another and staying in love with one another and be the best example to our kids that we can possibly be. So with Bella, it's do an activity, do a sport, do a passion, keep discovering yourself through purpose. She sings like an angel, so she's in a rock band. That's super fun. And I just want to encourage her to do something. I don't really care what it is. I just want to see her on a path towards something. And then with Luke, it's what more can I expose him to? He loves basketball. I think for me, the parenting is, because I don't know how great I am at all the words and all the boundaries, I get confused about where they should be. But I do know that what enriched my life was a plethora of experiences. So I just want to give them as many experiences as they can. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're doing a bang-up job at that, dude. You give you an A+ at that.
Yeah.
Because, we'd need 3 days to record all the trips that you've taken, the experiences that you've had. And so honored to, one, I feel very privileged to be able to watch and witness a lot of this and celebrate with you. 2, thank you, man, for including me in so much of it, because you have brought us along and scooped us up and created and done things for us that we wouldn't have done for ourselves, or couldn't have done for ourselves in that moment. I think about skiing with the kids, just Ocean and I just hopping on with you and Luke and going and just creating an adventure. Like, that wouldn't have happened had you not extended that invite. So
we've had some magic moments, but remember, that's like an example. That's a perfect example of one of the gifts.
Yeah.
My kids will grow up and they'll all know how to ski.
Yeah.
And they won't know how they learned how to ski. They won't remember that I drug them out there.
Yeah.
Even when they were crying and took them skiing, and they will have that as something they can lean on. So that's and taking you and Ocean is more fun. It's not less fun.
Yeah.
Like when I borrow your son for play dates,
yeah,
I love having him over, and I love that I don't have to try to watch Fast and Furious 7 or whatever it is they want to watch, because they're in it together. Yeah.
Well, and but it's a perfect example, and I know I'm taking a couple of extra minutes to kind of witness you right now and honor you right now, so I hope that's okay. But it's like getting a child ready to go skiing. This might sound it's
a lot.
This is a thing. This is a
Yeah.
thing. But what I watched you do was pour a tremendous amount of energy into the process of getting a little human onto a slope.
Yeah, of course.
From all the gear,
All hands on deck, man.
whether it's lessons, whether it's whatever it is. And then I watched you spend the vast majority of that day cheering Luke on, riding behind him, videotaping him. Like, I know you can get after it and charge hard, and you tackled that mountain, and you did it in record time, and you did all the things, right? But I watched this father in you, like, really put your own needs on the back burner and really pour into your son and my son, right? Like, to the point to where I remember going, I'm a little exhausted, and you're like, let's like, you had not tired, is my point. You had not tired of serving and doing things, and that was it. And then I also have a picture from that trip of you and Luke and Ocean putting together a puzzle. And it's a really cool picture where you're sitting at the coffee table and you're leaning in and you're helping them put this puzzle together. And I just want you to know that that's how I see you a lot.
Wow.
You know, I see you a lot in the position of leaning in. And so while there may have been seasons, and there's still hopefully seasons for you where you are the first one and you take care of you and you go take all the space you need to nurture yourself, that's critical. I see a tremendous amount of your life right now devoted to seeing other people, supporting other people, loving other people. And it's just awesome, man. So thank you.
Thank you. I received that.
Yeah.
Feels good to hear.
Yeah, it's fun to say.
It's been great to be with you today and talk about this. And
yeah, man.
yeah.
All right, buddy. Well, I hope we do this another time for another adventure. I'll be checking back in with you on like what direction you lean here, and I want to be involved in this on some level going forward. Where I want to get the kids to service projects.
Yeah. I mean, we can put up the Ancient Secrets logo maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
Donate a little money.
And dude, this is funny, but Clint's book, is it called Ancient Secrets or something like that?
Secrets of an Ancient Healer.
Yeah.
Master.
It's in my living room right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm 150 pages in, so I know a little bit about his world.
You should have him speak to your group. He's a really good speaker too. We're having him at GoBundance next week.
Yeah.
And I bet we raise $100,000.
I bet you do.
For him and for the kids.
For sure.
Yeah.
Real quick, GoBundance.
Yeah.
For anybody listening, just talk about that group real quick because I love to bring.
Well, GoBundance is an adventure mastermind for entrepreneurs. We've got a bunch of members. A lot of them are in Front Row Dads. I love it when they're in both our groups.
Yep.
I love it. Like, it's so cool. And Ray out of Dallas is one of my favorites.
Yeah, Ray Bayat.
He's like trying to get to all of our events.
Dude, so good.
Such a cool guy.
Epic human.
So it's just a tribe. If you've achieved a lot in life and you're successful and you're feeling kind of like a lone wolf and you want to fit with some other people where you don't have to hide yourself or be embarrassed for being awesome. You know, if you've accomplished a lot of times when you accomplish a lot, you get kind of lonely because you can't be like, I just bought a jet or like this. You got to be more like, oh, I'm sorry to hear you're struggling with your car for your friends from high school. Because you grow up together, but you don't necessarily ascend together. So we've created a tribe for wolves to come together in a pack, love one another, support one another, celebrate one another's successes, and teach people about relationship, about health and fitness, about adventure, about love, and about making more money. But everyone comes because they think it's about making more money, which you will learn. Yeah. But what they stay for is like the relationship pieces and the health pieces and all the bits and pieces we work in. So it's a lot like Front Row Dads. I think we're similar. Yours is just family focused with the business aspect, and we're just like, how can you be a more complete man? Yeah.
It's two great tribes. I have been to GoBundance adventures. I've spoken at GoBundance events. I have many friends in GoBundance. GoBundance has changed their lives in huge ways. I think about my longtime friend, John Edwin, who I know is like up in Philly, and he just went all in on GoBundance. He's
such an amazing, like, energizer bunny.
He's a driver. He just gets shit done, dude.
Yeah, he does. And I'm in a lifetime Front Row Dads. I mean, there's such a good parallel between the two.
We're always learning from it with each other. And your CEO, Matt King, is an incredible dude. And he and I have been riffing on, how to serve the communities.
Absolutely.
So that feels great. And I hope that I hope people check out GoBundance and lean in there because it is a great group of dudes.
They can find me at I am David Osborn on Insta.
Yep.
And I don't really care if anyone finds me or not. I just threw that out there because that's what a lot of people do at the end of their thing.
So you're supposed to do at the end of these
That's what you're
shows.
supposed to do. But it's so fun, John. I'm so honored to be in life with you, and I enjoy it so much, and I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Love you, brother. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening today, fellas. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you take 1 second right now and you share this with another dad in your life that you respect, that you know is committed to becoming a better man, family man, and businessman. And on that note, I want to honor you for choosing growth. Your family will thank you years from now for all the effort that you're putting in to learn the strategies so you can show up more fully for them today. Take care.